And what about you? And on the ramp today we have a 2010 model year Ford Focus Mark II on the 1.6 TDCi engine. Let's see how many miles we have. It's 206,237. And well, we're in for a timing belt. The owner tells me this timing belt's been changed before. I think he got it done, he said, at roughly about 100,000 miles. So this will be its third belt then. So the original belt, somebody else changed it. Looks like gates there. And I'm going to do it here now. So we're going to do a timing belt and a water pump. I never do just a belt. So it's timing belt, water pump, if the belt drives the water pump, that is, and then, you know, tensioner, whatever guide pulley. So it's a kit. I never do a timing belt on its own. Absolutely never. Insist on that. So if the punter doesn't like that, they can get it done somewhere else. What I can also see down here is the alternator. Looks brave and fresh. He didn't mention that. It's had an alternator. So we'll have a wee look at this, if I can see it. The serpentine belt in there might be okay. Probably will reuse that, by the looks of it. It may have been changed at the time of that alternator. So what I'm going to do, mark the direction of rotation. And we'll just get this cover whipped off. While the wheel's on the deck, we can maybe loosen some of these wheel nuts. See these Fords? So you can see here, they're devils with these wheel nuts. So here's one with a chrome, and then the rest of them chrome bits missing. So we'll have one of these sort of double entry sockets, 18.5 mil that side and 19.5 mil that side. You just swap it over, stick an extension on it. So 19.5 will go on that one, because if we just wing the gun on that, that'll just wreck that. That's how they've all get wrecked. Right, so we have a 15 mil spanner, fits on the top of the tensioner here, and we'll pull it back and we'll put a wee, it's like a 4 mil Allen there, just in that hole, just to stop it springing back. So if we didn't do that at this stage, if we didn't put the Allen in and we release the belt, you wouldn't get your spanner off. The spanner will hit the mount. So this is just a temporary thing, just so you can get the spanner off, really, you know. So that's it, and then just pop the belt off the alternator like that. So we're going to change the coolant in this car, and we're going to change the water pump. So I'm just going to drain all the coolant at the radiator here. So good big screwdriver. Oh, we score it with WD-40, I think. And just work it out a wee bit. Don't want that to snap. And we'll loosen the radiator cap. So while that's draining, we can get our wheel off and our wheel arch liner and let us get out the crank pulley. I think it's a load of T30s on here. Inner guard off. I just left that mud flap there. There's a bolt underneath, but it's fine, that'll do. So here's what we're presented with. There's our serpentine belt hanging down that we released from up top. And a wee visual inspection. So the engine is a wee bit dirty on it with oil, engine oil. I seen when I was up top on my visual inspection, there was a wee bit of engine oil up around top, so it is coming down. I'm happy enough. It's clean there, you can see, and I didn't wipe that. So I'm okay with the crank seal then, but something that's completely irrelevant to this job is the electro-hydraulic power steering pump hidden in here, and there's where you top it off with there, you know, and well, I would say that's never been topped off, because let's have a wee look. I put the torch up against it. Is that coming up? It's a bit low, so we'll top that off while we're in here, and that's still dripping. Right, we can get rid of this. That's all right, we'll reuse that. What is it? Continental. Now, I'm going to buzz this crank bolt off at this stage. We haven't the engine supported yet, the engine mount is still on. However, if you haven't got an air gun, and you're going to need this anyway, in my opinion, there's a hole back here, that hole there, and you can lock the flywheel at the TDC position, at the timing position, with a pin, an appropriate pin, you know, and well, you can take that off without a windy gun then. And this wee kit here, this wee pin kit, is what I would recommend using, whether you've got a windy gun or not. Now, you'll see a lot of people probably using drill bits for timing the cam and what have you, but it's this big thick pin is what the one that you want that'll lock the flywheel. So even though you might have a windy gun for taking off that there crank bolt in there, you know, you still need that. You still need to be able to lock the flywheel for to tighten it back up again. So there's a ferrule hoof on it. It's a stretch bolt. You need to replace it, and you need to lock the flywheel to do that. And it's that thick pin there will do that, and it will take the force, you know. So smaller pins, these type of pins here, I would refer to them as locating pins. So you don't put, you know, any torque on it, you just bend them. But this is a locking pin. So there's a difference between locating and locking. Anywho, this is on the Amazon store, CT4580, 4850 even, and it's £5. dirt cheap. So if you're going to do this job, get yourself one of them. And there's the range of vehicles it does. Citroën, Mazda, Peugeot, Ford, dv4, dv6, and the Ford TDCI engine. Hey, so it's an 18 mil, and we can just get it in between the power steering pipes. Get our pulley wheel off. Just, you know, see if that's tight. You know, try to avoid and, you know, the temptation to praise that in any way, because this here is the crank pickup. That's the crank sensor. So you don't want to touch that, or, you know, disturb it, bend it, and the car won't start. So our bolt that we took out, stick back in again. So bolt back in again, and I've now dropped the car down a wee bit and supported the engine with a jack and a rubber block. You could use a bit of wood so it's not damage the sump. And up top here then, we need to remove this engine mount, and to do that we need to remove this bottle. And that's another reason why we drained all the coolant out at the early stage. And what I'll do is these two pipes here, I'll just hit that a dab there and a dab there. Right, so now that bottle's out of the way, we can take this engine mount off. Now I like to take these off manually so that, you know, the engine just doesn't crash onto the jack. So, you know, it's nice and gentle with everything, you know. I don't know whether this here will break these or not, because it's not actually an impact, it's a ratchet. Inner ratchet. Let's see it. No problem. I haven't loosened these, by the way. Okay, so I've all the covers off and the engine mount that's bolted to the block removed. Now it is a bit of a cod, and so I'm just going to show you this after I've done it. You know, so they're all sort of interlinked together, the engine mount and the top cover and the lower cover. So the first thing you sort of have to do is release that tensioner again. So release that you know, the wee Allen that we put on, or pin, or whatever it is. So that's now not doing anything. See that wee bar there. So what you can do is with your spanner, you put your spanner on there, and now that the main mount is removed and the coolant bottle, you can sort of bring it forward a wee bit to miss it and allow it to go right back, because that see the wheel in there, the wheel, it sort of covers over one of the bolts, you know. And then at the top there is fuel pipes, which you can easily disconnect and just so they're on down there, so they can just rotate out of the way, you know, no problem. There's a few clips to remove. Let me see, where are you? In there, there's a clip there, and I disconnected a few wires here and there, and just to release this wiring to give it a bit of slack. There's a clip down there, release that, and that's just so all that sort of pulls forward, and that allows the top cover to come forwards. But you need to loosen the whole thing first, you know. So I'll just show you down here a wee second. So that's the offending bolt that, if you imagine our tensioner wheel sort of sits there, and you need to allow that to come back to here, you know. No bolt in this. This is the crank sensor wire clip. Just prise that out. So let me see. So this part of the lower cover is what stops the engine mount coming off, you know. And then up here, the top one and the lower one, they're sort of joined together. So the same bolt shares those two, so they're sort of all interlinked, you know. And just to rub salt in the wounds, the engine mount has dowels on it, so it doesn't just fall off if you take all those bolts out, you know. But you just work through it. Back in here, all we'll have to do then is remove this crank sensor here. It's looking at this rocker wheel, and then there's an extra bit of plastic held on here. Not sure what it does. Doesn't seem to do an awful lot, but there's no cover. And that's it. We'll get her tamed up. Right, so we'll have her all tamed up. So clearly here's our camshaft pin in. We'll have our fuel pump pin in. The fuel pump pin is very smaller than the hole, and there are versions where this pump wheel may be, you know, a different diameter. So let me show you. There's 3 holes in this particular version, 2 of which are threaded, and you know, the external hole, and it sits around that 4 o'clock position. But the hole behind that is a lot bigger than the hole in the wheel, you know. So as long as you can just eyeball it, you don't even need to pin that, to be honest with you. That fuel pump, if I can get it in. What is important is, let me see, or the one at the crank. So that one there, you know, you have to make sure that pin sort of falls into place. You know, you could, if you were off slightly, like half a tooth, you could maybe sort of force it in, because there's a distance between, you know, the reluctor ring and where it goes in on the block. But you just tap it around, you know, put a spanner on the crank nut and just give it a couple of taps with the palm of your hand and get it, you know, perfect. And the pin should just, as I say, fall in, if you know what I mean. No force required. And then if we notice on our camshaft pin, you know, there's actually a small hairline gap right around the pin, and it fits snug into the head. So that's how we know we're perfectly in time. The only other thing about this particular car is our big thick pin, which I went on about at the start. There is no hole in the flywheel in this car because it has an aftermarket flywheel. I did a single mass conversion in this car about a year ago or something, or maybe more, maybe 2 years ago for this guy, because he had a rattly dual mass flywheel and there's no hole, but it doesn't matter. Right, with everything removed, that's the old water pump. That's the, you can just about make out the writing on the belt, which is pretty shiny, pretty pliable. No cracks, but that's why you do this job. Wee bit of concern was the water pump. You can see the red staining here at the bottom. It's been trying to leak. And the other thing that I didn't like was, look at all this blue stuff. So there's like sealant on it. Now everybody's probably going to say, oh, it's blue Hylamar, you know, but this is, Hylamar doesn't set, you know. That there is, it's rubbery, so it's like a, you know, it is like a silicone, and you don't need it, you don't do that. You know what I mean? With a metal gasket, you don't do that with an O-ring either. No sealant required at all. The tension that came off it, believe it or not, was an INA one. We're using an INA kit to put that in. That'll come up in camera. Nah, probably won't. It says INA on it. Unbranded pulley wheel. Yes, so metal gasket on the new water pump with a wee bit of a clue. Oh yes, I almost forgot. For the water pump, so engine cooling for 1.6 TDCI, there is a tightening sequence. So we can see here 1, and then opposite 2, and then 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. Stage 1, 3 meters, which is just sort of hand tight, and then 10. So that's the sequence. You can pause the video there if you want and use that. So if I reference that to the water pump there. So number 1 is there, number 7 is there. That'll be 4. That'll be 5. That'll be 2, etc. And the other wee thing they should maybe point out, the tensioner, this is a new tensioner, comes with a pin in it. So you want to keep the pin in. So keep the pin in, and you know, until you tighten it up, and then your tensioning is in the direction of the arrow. So a lot of tensioners, most tensioners these days have a direction on them. You don't, you know, tighten it clockwise as if you were tightening a bolt, you know. So you tension it with the direction of the arrow. And basically until that pin goes loose, and then tighten the main nut. And you get all new bolts. Okay, so water pump on, you can see it down here, tighten to, with the diagram that I showed, the sequence. This here on, that there pulley wheel, 37 Newton meters in this one. Okay, with the pin out of the fuel pump, but with an eyeball, because this is going to move here when I'm tensioning this. So I'm going to show you, this pin is in, as we said, and we'll want this bolt, which is a new bolt that was supplied with the kit. We'll want this tight, but not tight enough so that this doesn't move. So we'll sort of snug it and then give it a wee bit back, if you know what I mean. Now, with our Allen key in, 6mm Allen key down the bottom there. And see from where you're doing this, if you're standing sort of at the front of the car, you can see it actually better than me on camera. But I'm watching this pin. That's what I'm watching. So my view is this way. I'm looking down here like that, you know. So I can't really see this thing lining up. So we're lined with that spud there. We want this to be in the middle, you know, the hole of where this pin goes in the middle of this sort of fork. So what we're going to do, it's maybe like a wee trick, is we tighten this in the direction of the arrow, which is anti-clockwise, and whenever this pin becomes sort of loose, when this pin moves and it becomes slack, we know then that it's not sort of catching. You know what I mean? So let's see. So you see, it moved there. So that pin should be slack. It's not resting on anything now. So we know that hole is in the middle. We'll give it another wee tiny bit. And I'll give it a nip. If I can get on it. And holding the Allen key at the same time. You know what I mean? That's enough. And that pin should be loose because it's in the middle of the fork. So if I pull the pin out, that should be in between those two. You know? So that's where you want it to be. And that's why, having to really look at it, the pin is there to tell you its position, you know? So once we're happy with that, and we can see our fuel pump still lines up, because it will pull around on the tension, you know. So it's maybe worthwhile having it on a bias that way, and then when it pulls, it's going to pull back. Anyway, it's not crucial, but you know, I like it to be where it's supposed to be. So that's nipped up. Everything else is torqued. Well, that and the water pump. We can pull that. Pull the crank, and it says in the book to rotate this over clockwise 10 times. So 10 times, I think I lost count there, and I ended up doing about 14. The reason why in case you're wondering why I want you to spin it over that many times, is to line this fuel pump back up again, you know, to get that hole aligned up, because normally you would only spin it over, you know, 2 rotations. So if you're just lining this up, because that cog is twice the size of the crank down there. But anyway, that's why I want you to spin it over that many times. But anyway, there you go. Because there's an extra cog that you're wanting to line up. What you could do for the check tension is, you know, if you're happy enough with the fuel pump isn't really that crucial, but you want it to be in the right place, like, you know. Some of them are phased and pulsed, and some of the Fords, if the fuel pump isn't timed correctly, you know, it can actually put stress on the belt, you know, because it sort of pulses anyway. That's another story. So inevitably you're going to lose a bit of tension whenever that happens, whenever you rotate it over, I mean, and that's the belt sort of, you know, finding its own sort of bedding in, you know. So you might have to adjust that tensioner again. Well, you will. Not that you might. You definitely will. You always have to. So there's where you want it. The wee pin sort of tells you, you know. So the wee pin, if I can keep this in shot, I'm zoomed in that much. So the wee pin wants to be nearly flush with the wheel, you know. And when you pull the pin out, it's nice and loose, because it's not catching either side of the hole and the fork. So it's quite tricky to get it right, because whenever you tighten that nut or bolt there, you know, it sort of makes it a bit tighter. So you have to sort of counter hold the Allen key and tighten it, keep that pin in, watch that pin. If that pin goes taut, then you know you're off, you know. So anyway, happy enough for that. So our final torques is 37 on that one. I already had that done. Should have had that done before you rotate it, you know. And I put a wee mark on it just to tell me that it's done. If that comes up in camera, there's a yellow mark there. This one here is 23 Newton meters, and we'll just counter hold it with the Allen key when we're doing that. But I have it nipped up, should be fine. And keep the pins in when you're doing that. So double check all our pins are out and our crank sensor back on again. Everything all cleaned up clearly. And that wee plastic guide piece there put in. And yeah, we'll get the covers on, get them cleaned up as well. And the engine bracket. And we're on the home straight. Right, so all the covers back on again. So just to give you a wee tip, because these covers are sort of interlocked a wee bit, and they're interlocked with this engine support mount thing. What I did there was I put those bolts in here and didn't tighten them up, you know, had them sort of loose. Lower cover in, the lower cover lips over the top underneath here of the bracket, and then the top cover is up over the top of it. So sort of kept everything loose, made sure all the bolts were lined up, you know, run everything in, and then nip these up. 55 Newton meters. It's a right hoof now. 55 Newton meters on all those bolts. At this point, what you want to do is get this serpentine belt tensioner or auxiliary belt tensioner. So you see where the spanner just sort of clears, a bit of an angle, but it's fine. So get this serpentine belt tensioner pulled back and locked into position with your Allen key again, while the mount isn't there. So with the engine mounting on up top, and I've raised the vehicle up so it's no longer on a jack then, and that's to tighten this crank bolt. So our new crank bolt that we've got in the kit is in it. We discard this one, no longer required, and so it's just hand typed on it. So you want this, you see it rocks on the key there, so that's it located, and 2 stages of tightening, so 30 Newton meters, that's just to squeeze it up, and then 180 degrees, so that's from the top 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. And as I say, you normally, it's a gift to do that if you lock her up with this pin, but I have no hole in this flywheel, so I can't do that. So we'll do the 30 Newton meters. So my counter hold might, well, we'll see. So I've made sure these buys here don't touch the reductor ring back there, you know, because if you damage it or bend it or move it or scrape it, well, the car won't start. And we're sort of having to take it all apart again. So there's a bit of a risk factor here, and I don't like taking risks of any description. Well, that's 30. Right, so I've marked it 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock. And well, we'll do a wee bit with the counter hole, but if it gets too heavy, I'll maybe just go on it the rest of the way, you know. What's that like? You can't really see it. But if I turn that wee light off, you can maybe see that, stop the reflecting. So there we go. That worked alright. Coolant bottle back on again, full fresh coolant, all the electrical connections connected up again, all clips in. We did break those low pressure fuel hoses. However, there is a diesel filter which is full of diesel. So this should start okay. Final thing to keep in mind is no pins, no locking pins, no ratchets or spanners on the crank bolt, all that, you know. So it's a final crucial thought, just a quick look around to make sure there's nothing on. No pins, no nothing, no locking pins. I'm telling you, it's been done. But anywho, just a thing I forgot to mention. This car came in last night, late last night. The guy came quite a distance to get this done. So he came late last night. I threw it in the garage and didn't start it until this morning. It's now the afternoon. And the reason for that is you want to do a time belt job at ambient temperature or workshop temperature, whatever that may be. So if the engine's warm at all, you need to let her cool down, because all those sort of tolerances and all will be off with the heat. So here we go, first startup. No bother. So I'll just let that run the idle. Don't do any raving or anything like that right away, you know. Let the heat build up. That will get it up to temperature, that'll drop, and then, you know, we'll top it up. Shouldn't be a big deal. I usually never get it running, out up to temperature, take it out for a good run, and then leave it, just park it up for a couple of hours, and that will drop then top it up before you get back to the customer. So there you go, that's it for this one. Maybe you got something out of it, didn't cover everything. It's not too bad, the covers are a bit of a flaff, but apart from that,